What's up, you freaking geniuses? So in this video, I'm going to teach you how to find the inverse of a function. So I'm going to go over some linear examples, quadratic examples, and some radicals, right? So there's basically just two steps that we need to follow to solve these. The first one, well, I guess the very first one, is just replacing f of x with y, right? Then your other step is going to be just flipping y and x, and then we're just going to solve for y. Okay, so let's start with this one right here. F of x is equal to negative 2x plus 5, right? So f of x is the same thing as y, right? So y is equal to negative 2x plus 5, right? Now I'm going to flip x and y, so I'm going to write this as x is equal to negative 2 times y plus 5. And then here we're going to solve for y, right? So the first thing we can do is get rid of this 5, right? Subtract 5 from both sides. So we get x minus 5 is equal to negative 2y. And then we can divide both sides by negative 2 to get rid of that. And then here we're just left with x minus 5 divided by negative 2 is equal to y. Okay, now x divided by negative 2 is just negative x over 2. And negative 5 divided by negative 2 is positive 5 over 2, right? So plus 5 halves, and that's equal to y. Okay, so this is our inverse function. So for your final inverse function, you can write it as the inverse function, like that, is equal to this guy right here, negative x over 2 plus 5 halves, all right? So there's your final answer right there. All right, let's try this one. F of x is equal to 4x squared, all right? So again, we're going to replace this guy with y. So we're going to say y is equal to 4x squared. And then just flipping x and y, we're going to have x is equal to 4y squared, all right? Now let's solve for y here. So first thing we can do is get rid of this 4 by dividing both sides by 4. So then we get x over 4 is equal to y squared. Now to get rid of this exponent, we can take the square root of both sides, right? So then here those cancel out, and we're just left with y is equal to plus or minus, right, because we're taking the square root here, of x over 4, right? The square root of x over 4. Okay, now the square root of x over 4, I'll write it over here. We can simplify this a little bit because 4 is a perfect square. So the square root of x over 4 is the same thing as the square root of x over the square root of 4, which is equal to the square root of x over 2. Okay, so then here, simplified, this is plus or minus the square root of x over 2, and that's equal to y. And again, y is just our inverse function, so we can just write that right now. So this, again, is equal to the inverse function right there. Boom. Okay, here we have f of x is equal to x minus 3 cubed, right? So again, we can just rewrite this as y is equal to x minus 3 cubed, and then we'll flip these two as x is equal to y minus 3 cubed, right? So we're going to solve for y here. The first thing we can do is get rid of this cubed exponent, and we can do that by taking the cube root of both sides. Okay, so then on this side, the cube root and cubed exponent cancel out. So then we're just left with y minus 3 is equal to the cube root of x. Okay, now here we can add 3 to both sides, right? So then we get the cube root of x plus 3 is equal to y. And again, y is our inverse function, so I'll just write it like that right now. So just like that. Boom. All right, just a couple more here. So here is f of x is equal to the square root of x minus 6. Okay, so again, we're going to rewrite this as y is equal to the square root of x minus 6, and then we'll flip those two guys as x is equal to the square root of y minus 6. All right, now in order to get rid of the square root, again, we can just square that, and what we do to one side, we do to the other. So then here we get x squared is equal to y minus 6, right? Then we can add 6 to both sides. So we get x squared plus 6 is equal to y. And again, this is already simplified, so we can just write that as the inverse function. Boom. All right, last one here. So we have f of x is equal to -3 times the square root of 4x minus 7 over 3. All right, so again, we're going to rewrite this as y is equal to -3 times the square root of 4x minus 7 over 3. And then we'll flip x and y as x is equal to -3 times the square root of 4y minus 7 over 3. Okay, the first thing we can do here is get rid of this -3 by dividing both sides by -3. So then on this side we get -x over 3, -x over 3, and that's equal to, was canceled out, the square root of 4y minus 7 over 3. Okay, the next thing we can do is get rid of the radical, the square root, so we can do that by squaring this whole side and squaring this whole side, right? So then over here, these guys cancel out. And on this side, -x over 3 squared, well, you have to apply the exponent to the top and to the bottom. So first of all, a negative times a negative is a positive, so our answer turns positive. And on top, we'll have x squared. And on the bottom, we'll have 3 squared, which is equal to 9. All right, so then that's equal to just what's left in the radical, 4y minus 7 over 3. Okay, now here we can get rid of the 3 by multiplying both sides by 3. Multiply that whole side by 3 and this whole side by 3, if I know how to write a 3. So then on top over here, we'll get 3x squared, and on the bottom, we just still have a 9. So 3 over 9 reduces down to 1/3, right? So we can write it as 1x squared over 3, or just x squared over 3, okay? And then that's equal to this guy over here, those cancel out, just 4y minus 7. Okay, now here we can add 7 to both sides, so then up here I'll write it. We'll be left with x squared over 3 plus 7 is equal to 4y. And lastly, we can get rid of the 4 by dividing by 4, but in this case, since we already have a fraction here, maybe it's a little easier to just multiply by 1/4, okay? So let's multiply this whole side by 1/4, and we'll multiply this whole side by 1/4, okay? So then here the 4 and the 1/4 cancel out, so we're just left with y is equal to this whole mess. So here we can just multiply everything by 1/4. So first of all, 1/4 times x squared over 3. Remember, whenever we multiply fractions, you just multiply straight across, right? So here we'll have x squared on top, and on the bottom we'll have 12. And then 1/4 times 7 is equal to positive 7/4, okay? So then this is our final simplified answer. We finally solved for y, right? So we end up with x squared over 12 plus 7 over 4 is equal to the inverse function. So if you found the video helpful, definitely leave a thumbs up down below. And if you have any other questions or want to see any other examples, just let me know in the comment section below.